Good afternoon. This is July 8th, and this is actually it's a very good day for me to start to presenting this program. The program's name Romantina slash Romansina. First of all, this combination of the Romantina and the Romansina is a combo of the language development I have been trying to develop in the last few years, or ever since COVID, since my return into the education and with my work in counseling psychology and the development of the called the 3C communication system, and then eventually culturally and anthropologically evolving to the books, a series of books I've written all under the title of The Psychology of Round and Square. To give you an overall background, this particular merger of the language, Romantina, is a linguistic group based on the four languages which I have a pretty good command in: Spanish, Portuguese, Italian. French, I can read, all because of the Latin language exposure and the Roman Catholic education and the learning of the Latin and the singing Gregorian in the church sets of circumstances. So I'm a cross-cultural product. And today, in what I'm feeling very exciting about this particular program is in the three sets of time frames. I finished my master's in 1974 from the University of Wisconsin at Platteville here in the US. And then eventually we venture onto different business for over 45 years involving the industry of colored gemstones, jewelry, and predominantly with Brazil. And this 45 years also have a very interesting coincidence between our business and the time frame almost precisely matching the rise of the Chinese economy by the declaration by Deng Xiaoping, 1978. And I was in that part of the world in Hong Kong, Macau, and China. But all in all, what is very enriching in this particular part of Romantina is a consolidation of my acquired four languages, that meaning Portuguese, Spanish, Italians, and English, plus my first language, Chinese, in handling the three dialects. But what is very important here is that another transitioning is with all this preparation, or since our business developed 1977, and since 1991 is where we entering from our use of telex machines, whatnot, fax machine, but our entry into the world of the internet and the use of computer. So this is a long time away by us engaged into a new IT era. And from IT, information technology, and now we are stepping into the AI. As you will see from the rest of the picture I show in the screen, I will be speaking quite a bit about in how I use what I call the cultural spheres, and I'm basically indicating to my audience that I come from this IT. Now we're into AI, and it's very interesting. I use this one part of the cultural sphere that I'm living in today called ITAI, and that's part of the linguistic background growing up in Brazil and exposed to the indigenous language, Tupi Guarani, and Ita means stones. And so in the last 45 years, We were engaged in the industry of precious stones, gemstones, diamonds, jewelry, including the stones being using now that we're engaged with the export of granite from Brazil. So ITAI, the information technology plus the artificial intelligence, had given me this cultural sphere, and just progressively on our own terms from the 1991 internet awareness usage to the software program with the Microsoft Words and spreadsheets. Well, spreadsheets are the first use of data, of the component of the data, which had given us into this particular time and moment in using of the 5 languages that I have, and with our knowledge in the handling of the data, and from the information technology to now the digital era. But I want to define more about this particular time and moment as I am engaging this new cultural sphere, which I use quite often. You will see all my presentations will be explaining in every picture you see is basically shaped and framed into the various spheres. I'm trying to be just be progressive, showing how we have progressed in this last 45 years from the ma and pa business into now a digital business. This is quite important. And even in the name, in the languages, had given me some of the distinction. More so, I'm also opening up to the area called the psycholinguistics. In this format, where I have detected in the use of AI in the Western context, in English per se, is not quite justified in the way we're using AI. In the AI written in Chinese is written as man-made wisdom. This may not have much meaning to many of you until you will see through the graphics in the last frame, which I look at, we search for human knowledge. From knowledge, we put what we learn, what we care to know, or we have perceived or understood, put into the package in the sphere of intelligence. In this area of the intelligence, many billionaires have been created. In your use of intelligence, in your using the coordination, the particular intelligence, you make the assembly, you created an enterprise, be that Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, and in China, TikTok, or the other platforms, is all about data. And so in the intelligence area, which is very interesting, is where the most engaged. We all talk about everyday AI, intelligence, and whatnot. But however, in this part of intelligence, there were positive and negative. There were other intelligence that have been using in a more devious way. Call it business, call it intelligence, call it cunning. But there are other people have been using what they know of human intelligence and become predators. There are people who earn their money, like Google said, do no evil. I kind of respect that. That means in what they do, what they try to do, have not taken away or diminished, either become a predator and move on. Of course, some of the praise are willing to sell out to the predators. Some are good, some are not so good. So anyway, as a psychologist, as a psycholinguistic educator, I am very much um, paying focus on the predation and the game people play in this intelligence sphere, because I'm also working on another format of as a language. in the psycholinguistic field and conscience, okay, um, we have our religious values, we have our cultural values to tell us what is right and wrong. But in all these years, I'm involving in the psychology and the languages, and I was introduced or seduced by the work of Paulo Freire from Brazil. And what I'm doing is basically giving you a little bit of clarification where I stand, what are my values, or maybe this is the philosophical values that we have. And Paulo Freire's use of conscientization had triggered me back to the 14th century of the Chinese philosopher Wang Yangming, who also has spoken about conscience. And in his method of directing his education by fostering conscience studies. So I put his work into conscientology. I put this here because a lot of my work here will be mingling in this particular field, which can be extremely attractive, including both the use of the creation of the languages and the dictionary started with, then run right into the search engine side of it, and also the modification of the Chinese language into the modern day, where I'm contributing will be continued by others. So I'm not just, it's not a methodology, it's the evolution of us in learning of the new environment, new culture in the IT to AI, and also now creating new enterprises that are into billions of dollars. So we're talking business, economics, and also culture and languages and psychology. So in this particular time and point, I'm modeling almost like DeepSeek or any other open sourcing. I have no fear about the participation or people if you want to come in to do what I do and do better, more power to them. So this clarification about I have found that the two language terminologies, the artificial intelligence, it seems like we are taking the intelligence, we are taking the general intelligence and use to our application. In my book publishing now, Amazon in Kindle always ask, have you used any AI material? But in the way I have been writing, or even in the creation of this particular program, it's a psycholinguistics, but language and intelligence, and also in the AI era, in my exchange with my use with DeepSeek partially, and my most frequent use with the Claude by Anthropic, it's almost like one leading another. There are more of their production of the schedules, forecasting, but also what they have done before is moving away my blind spots. I keep using the way I'm coming to the AI environment is because we often have only drivers can feel that we are two blind spots over our shoulder. Anytime you're trying to pass either from the left and right in the American system of the 8-lane, 4-lane highway, that's always the concern. But the AI seem to be creating fabulous systems for Tesla, from BYD in China, or the AI-driven automobiles and the movements. But by the same token, what I'm trying to define about AI in the Western way versus the Chinese translation or the Chinese interpretation of AI is almost like the evolutionary, is the man-made wisdom. There, for my cultural spheres, basically just talk about recycling knowledge back to knowledge, in between go to the intelligence field and then come to the conscience screening, make sure everything is okay by my standard, and then moving to the next cultural sphere to wisdom, and then putting back to the general body of knowledge. You will see this image on my last page of this presentation. So in this format, I really think Chinese use and speak of the AI, and we can now use AI, WI, representing wisdom. And I think in the future, all users, when they sense this recycling or put it back where they belong from the knowledge going through the intelligence application and use, make your money, make your gain, make your fame, open up your more AI and open up into the future of the spatial web. And as you shall see, in what I'm speaking, that graphically will be showing in the last 4 frame when you download this particular video. So AI, WI, and now we are, when you look at the overall knowledge to knowledge recycling image, and you may understand what I'm trying to say, is there's more dynamic between the Chinese use of WI and the Western use of AI. So without any further, I'm going to continue presenting. In all the images here, you will have enough with the document, the first page with the link. But in this particular moment, when I started, this is all artwork. Okay, I invited many of you come and share the language. I put down Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Italian, but there was always other linguistic groups like Romanians, or in our Portuguese and Spanish arena in Iberia, we have Galicia, that we speak the Gallego or the Galicians. And so this is just another image in the sharing. In the way I have started, I'm inviting people and come and to explore. This is about 6.5 years ago. We're just basically written as a template to my students. This is the main image. Romantina is Romano or Latina. Okay, so we talk about the language is called Romantina is Romano y Latina or Romana Latina. Anyway, I put the Romansina. This is where is the first format of a dictionary, an image I have drawn. Because in the using of the English and Chinese, when you're going through, I am basically adapting. Okay, what I'm doing, this is the data sequencing. This is another terminology. I think many people use it. I don't have to coin it, but the sequencing of the data is that the lingua franca, the language of the conqueror today predominantly is English. To borrow Facebook, I think they have generally they have a 1.6 billion global users. In our case, the Romantina group with the Portuguese, predominantly Portugal and Brazil, and the Portuguese Africa with Guinea-Bissau in Guinea and Cabo Verde and Angola, and then the east coast of Africa with Mozambique, and then to the Portuguese entity in Asia by way of Hong Kong, Macau. And the language used by the Portuguese collectively is close to 300 million. And the Spanish, which is much larger, they have 400 million users. But between the Portuguese and Spanish, we're already having an approximately 800 million users. And for those who know the language, will find out it's much simpler to communicate between a Spanish speaker and a Portuguese. Some may find it difficult, the nasal sound, São Paulo, and so on and so forth. But all in all, and one step further out is Italian. And I put in the French. The French probably is a little bit more further out than the three of us, the Portuguese, Spanish, and Italian. But the French speakers is one of the largest in the Romantina group. There were about 600 million. That is, for the most part, at the North Africa, in the zone between the desert and the tropical, the Belgian Congo and all the other country. They have a huge French-speaking African nationals, including Burkina Faso, that lately we have got so much news from them. So between the four language groups, Italians have a more political division region where they speak in Switzerland and Italy, San Marino, and also ethnic Italians. That one of the largest Italian immigrants population is in Brazil. I grew up in Brazil and grew up especially in Sao Paulo, all the way south, even all the way to Argentina. The presence, the food of the Italians have always been around. In fact, I feel it. I personally learned to speak with my hands like the Italians because I have studied under the Roman Catholic order, the Salesians, since Macau days, and then to Brazil, and then most of my friends in the Sao Paulo area were predominantly, if you use the last name, mostly were Italians. So in this particular sense, just of these four languages, their landmass from Africa to Latin America, Brazil, and Iberia, they have one of the largest land mass. Also, population. If nothing else, this group is almost 1.4, 1.5 of the Chinese and the Indian. And then this Romantina group will come very close to another entity. Okay. So, in the way I have programmed and projected that now that we have the BRICS, now we have the Global South. By the document you will see this Romantina group is one of the largest land mass in the entire continent. And we have come close to the 1.3, 1.4. But if you add the other non-Latinos, non-Romantino groups like Chinese, who have 600 million involving in the learning of English alone, we take a percentage of the 600 million. Now the Chinese is growing and they're also expanding economically, both culturally and linguistically, to engage the world in a broader sense. Even in this week, we're talking about BRICS in Rio de Janeiro. You can imagine the number of people would like to get involved in the language groups. If you learn Portuguese and Spanish, you already can basically capture 90% of Latin America. There was only two other countries on land, is the French Guyana and also the old Dutch Guyana, Suriname. So if you have this exposure of the language, and that is how I have created Romansina in the use of the two language, which I repeat is a lingua franca. Okay, the Roman were the first lingua franca. The English in the last 300 plus years is the lingua franca of the world. They write the law. We Chinese know how we suffered through the inequality treaty, the Chinese diaspora, or the Chinese Holocaust, even by the Opium War, and how much China has suffered under this power and rules and technology and the expansion of the West, with India and China at one time holding the 50% of the world wealth, but losing to the advance of the West with technology and linguistically. So we're talking about in this coming decades, as we are sharing today, the meeting now happening in Rio de Janeiro, the BYD just opening up their first sales to the cars in Bahia, all this potential language emerging. And that's how I started 6.5 years ago, thinking about if I use just a dictionary with Chinese and English, flip flop either way. So Chinese can use English, but next one you click your Romantina, you will see the sequence. You can start it with, yes, French, Italian, FI, and then Portuguese, Spanish. But either way, but once you click the Romantina dictionary, if the next button, which all just going to order search engine like all others, our platform can be team up with either DeepSeek or any other AI. But with DeepSeek, probably we have a better use of the linguistic composition component. And also, just between us, talk about language efficiency. Is I do many translations, even by the use or abuse of the Google Translate. You can see the word count when it comes to Chinese is much more condensed. In other words, it's a kind of a simpler condensation in the use of the words. Maybe because Chinese we don't have much of the grammar, such as time factor. I go to school today, I go to school tomorrow, I go to school yesterday, I go to school 2 years ago. In the use of the language and the verbiage, I have noticed every time in all the documents, the Chinese translation always have the shortest text. And with my other notes, the Russian seem to be a lot longer in the character count, text count. So the Romansina will be a dictionary first, in the first respect to the lingua franca of English. So either way, for the Chinese user can use the Chinese, go to English, English to Chinese, either way. So from the Romantina Latin group will also have the same access. They can all go to English and then find it in Chinese. But this is the great time and moment in our lifetime that we can create this sequencing of data, because all the data are available. And the Romansina and Romantina, that will be much more time and investment in the search in the Chinese dictionary, just because in my use of the Romance language or the Latin languages. So this will be a double benefit to all of you who are coming into this picture. I'm not sure you're coming in as a user. You're coming into thinking about potentially about this is a good business you want to step into. And I will explain. The format is very simple, very straightforward, because that's how my wife and I starting our business in 1977 and eventually get an SBA loan and have moved forward. It's discipline, planning, formatting your life and make it simple. And here, just about the Chinese, I will have more in the next series of the videos. I will put in forth more of the graphic work that I do, and the reason I'm using color. And another language, again, sometimes it's a repetitive, but I'm not holding on to this graphics. I want you to see the way I'm using is just very, very dynamic. And verbally, we will have coaches, we will have teachers, we will have schools and seminars. Okay, just to give you a little hint, little simple terms. Buongiorno, giorno is Italian, good morning. Well, if people say that I don't speak Italian, well, you do in English. Every day you read the Milwaukee Journal, you need the Wall Street Journal, giorno, 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 that's Italian. Okay, I'm just playing a little bit, because language has got to be spontaneous. You got to be playful to learn. And Romantina, as I said here, is a very enrichment of the language for life and have fun, and we can start it at all ages. So the language platform eventually will be engaged to other linguistic groups, or we can interface. They can even come and participate. Our objectives is to have less rules because I learned my Portuguese by sound. Yes, I gone to school, but it's by the interaction, very simply. Who doesn't learn to the swear word first? I can even swear in Hungarian just for the short time as a swimmer, competing swimmer in Brazil, Sao Paulo, and all my swimming friends are from ethnic Hungary. I just go through this. The data here from the first document to the last document, I repeat, you will have a much richer document because this was done 4 or 5 years ago. And the data I have in the first documentation is all being generated by AI. And in my working with predominantly, I spend my time with the Anthropics group and Claude. We have a very wonderful working relationship. Maybe the tempo, the language, maybe they flatter me. I thank them. I really feel the more I'm working on the AI, I really feel the Chinese use of the man-created, man-made of wisdom is a lot more evolutionary, a much more natural pace than just artificial intelligence. You are not artificial. I'm not artificial. None of this data created is artificial. Man put this data together, okay? Except the quantum can go faster, higher electricity, and all that. That is part of enhancement. And all this graphic work, this particular page here is using from Wikipedia. For me, I was able to get the flag, get the country, get the number, and that fascinated me. I have more difficult time with the Italian language here, but from the first page or the last page is you can have all the data much more enriching. This is what I'm talking about one more time. Does AI, eventually, I love to see the AIWI and give me the credit of the creator's nomenclature because man-made wisdom is what Chinese word created exactly right here. And I would like to, it's nothing about a partially biased to the Chinese. That's why I said AIWI can creating a symbiosis like all the future work we have with this age of a digital age. And one more time, the emphasis, the way I do my Chinese wording is composing the words and then individual meaning and sound, and then what it meant and the English I put on top. ITAI, again, is partially part of my own enculturation about putting ITAI into ITA, which is Portuguese meaning stone. And then when I was creating this, we're heading into my awareness of the spatial web. Okay. And because the spatial web, I created the Itais web. And this a little bit of a clarification. This essentially I'm talking about is in my psychological studies, body of knowledge going into the intelligence field, which I have included AIWI in intelligence. And then in the thinking process, we think with rational, irrational, and reason. This is more of a psychological emphasis of my work, but we can all partake. The conscience is the filtration to the wisdom going back to knowledge. And I can make this knowledge sphere cover the entire page. But nevertheless, for this part of it, I want you and I can share all this graphics again in the using of Canva and help me think, give me orientation, and give me space, and I can stretch the sphere from the earlier on the Shang Dynasty, where the oracle bones were found, and stretch all the way to the characters we use today. In other words, the spheres has a more dexterity, a flexibility to let you make your expressions. Okay, so I'm going back to the again go back to the first page of Claude. In this link, you'll be able to read the way I have constructed and the way I have built it, and I am literally emulating DeepSeek to put this in the open format. It is an open business because what this can generate, you will see the configuration that I have in here. In my hypothesis, very simple mindset. If DeepSeek had created what they had created with less than $6 million, what kind of funding do I need to create? On this alone, I surveyed in the use of Claude, in the use of my study and hypothesis of the charge and the usage per country, per nation. And I set the estimated fee. It can vary from 1 to 30 cents. Eventually, we can scale back, scale down. It's about making money is the monetary economic agility, or that maybe give the respect for my audience that Paul is capable to do that. But the reality is, I am just estimating the number of nations involving Romantina, 1.3, 1.4, at another 300 million from China. Maybe I can just using the same figure as Zuckerberg used on his Facebook. I will have an audience estimation in the first phase, like I said, the first 2 years is 1.6 billion. If I charge them per country $1 per person, and you shall see in the schedule, it is still under $1 for the most part, under 1% of the national educational budget. We have not even discussed what this Romansina dictionary first search engine information data to the audience, to the young people, so that if I have a guess estimate about 1.6 billions moving forward, if what 6 million have built DeepSeek, what can 1 billion be building for my platform? It's that simple. It's nothing difficult. You want to understand why this is so simple? Because my family, our business, starting in 1977, we basically $3,000 borrowed under. But we're both very confident with our master's degrees, like 5 languages. And I didn't want to put up the kind of bureaucratic crap in the college environment. I have fulfilled my wish, want to be in education, as I was at age 16, made my vow to poverty to work with the Salesians. And I was baptized by the Macau Jesuits from the Matteo Ricci. So that idea about getting rich is there. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that I'm denying wealth. In the second year of our business, we managed to get a $300,000 business loan from the SBA. And we did create it, more or less, our little empire. And that can be a story, can be told in the future, because when you have a system you developed into one color zone of the entire gem tray with the lowest cost gemstones called amethyst, and yet have the richest color ever. Well, that was my budget. I started with that frame of mind. I buy many stones. I love all stones. But the amethyst, we're starting with $1 a carat. Eventually, we have sold to companies like Sharper Image, one of my major clients, and working for Sharper with far chopper image. We sold to the cruise lines, Carnival Cruise. We don't sell, we consign. Great. I hate to hustle anybody. I dislike sales. I gotta pump myself up. But anyway, the story, we started our life in a very simple way with $3,000 borrowed, eventually $300,000 to build our program with the amethyst, allowing us to have a cutting factory from Brazil, eventually to Thailand, by the border of Burma, in Myanmar, and also testing, cutting in South Korea, and even in Sri Lanka, because the access of the raw material from Sri Lanka, finally, the factory ended up developed in China. So in my short 30 years, or the first 10 to 15 years, traveling around the world, Germany, either Oberstein, Switzerland, we can dislike the food in Switzerland, then go to Basel for dinner, and then furthermore, we going back to Switzerland, heading to Italy, just liking the food quality more than Germany. Whatever. I mean, that kind of idiosyncrasy, or having breakfast in Austria and dinner eventually later on in part of Europe. But this is the language allowance, the mobility, the communication, and the articulation in what I do, what we have done with the $1 carat amethyst. To make the short story very short, in one of the ventures, I spent 5 days in Brazil, spending $350,000 of money from SBA to make purchase of the gemstones and minerals to go to Hong Kong for the first Hong Kong colored gemstone show. Today is 3,000 exhibitors in the Hong Kong Jewelry Show. That trip had taken me 5 days in Brazil. So we divided 350,000 by 5. Yes, how much money I'm spending per day and per minute, and hauling all the stuff into a 320-kilo bags, duffel bags, one in the backpack, 2 on the side, carrying 60 kilos of stones, both rough minerals, heavy, and the cut stones. A 16-hour flight from Brazil to Johannesburg. 16-hour flight, had to wait over 8 hours, the connection flight from Johannesburg to Hong Kong, without a restaurant, no facilities. Finally, I spent $20 for my first meal, basically bribing a cleaning lady to buy whatever she could have bought and bring it back to me. Got on the flight, 16 and a half hours later, landed in Hong Kong, 6 in the morning. At 10 o'clock, I opened our show. In between, this is recorded, I was invited to the program in Hong Kong, Good Morning Hong Kong, because the entire 16 exhibitors, I'm the only one who can use English, Portuguese, Spanish, Cantonese, Mandarin to communicate with the media. And in that particular time, when that is done, I have no other clothing but a khaki shirt, denim, and a pair of what the American call the shit kickers, or the Brazilian call, we just call the little booties, bota de caipira. Finished the show, went to finish the interview, went to the show at 10 o'clock, opening the shop. In that 4.5 days, I only sold my 50,000 carats of amethyst. I pay $1 a carat. I built that 50,000 carats. Sold it for $5. I get my cover back, basically. The rest is all gravy. It sounds sensational. It sounds almost idiotic. It sounds irresponsible. This is the planning, tabulation, calculation from Brazil, leaving Chicago to Brazil, Brazil to Johannesburg, Johannesburg to Hong Kong, Hong Kong, do the show. My first batch of gemstones, $50,000 cost, recover all my cost of goods. That is part of the audacity. That is part of the imagination, but also part of the planning. And this is what had moved me into the data era. No matter how much money we have generated in the last 45 years, I'm firmly believe with this program, with 3 other potential programs, if I can make it for the rest of my life, I'm 77 today. But this open idea with the 1.6 users and with a high expectation to charging $1 per population per country, I have a good base to generate this 1.6 billion in the next 2 years. And no need to exaggerate. I don't need big money to coming into me because we just starting very basic to build the company in Hong Kong, put in the best writing, the best accounting, planning, and take the company public, whatever it costs. 400,000, 1 million, 2 million, that's doable. And this is part of the confidence coming from a MAPA, most basic in the raw land, in the bunda, in the boonies of Brazil, to create a gemstone and mineral enterprise, which we are still sustaining, to step into the data. This is a bonanza. I can work with all my clients sitting here in the house with the computer in the hotel room, in the conference room, in Hong Kong, in Europe, or back to Brazil. This is part of the joy of life. And that's why I have not given up. I have started 1991, my journey into learning IT, and now I am pouring up the steps into AI. And all of a sudden, I'm flying into the space. So, in what I have here, I will try to do as much broadcasting as possible. And I would like for those to make inquiry by email on my next broadcast. We will have probably other participants. But this is an exciting time for me to see what we have built, or when I started to engage in technology in 1991. And hear me out. There are hundreds of people out there say, Paul, you're a dreamer. Forget it. You are not one of those smart kids. Okay. I saw who started eBay, and he left, moved to Hawaii. I saw the rise of Yahoo. I saw the incoming of Google. I have seen all this company, Amazon, and also see Zuckerberg's Facebook. In fact, I'm in Facebook every day. And I got booed out 1,000,000 times. And guess what? I got another niche to play with Facebook. I mean, take it as a game. You have the time, you can think, you can imagine, you can put all these variables together. And this, my first long waited, think about it, I never waited for the arrival of AI or the arrival of this era. But I have a hunch when I started in 1991. In that same year, I told my entire team, this business of the dishonesty, cheating, misleading of the gem trade is over by me. And I will build another system to challenge, to service our business with both intelligence and wisdom. And this is part of the competence. It is an open format. You're all welcome to come and look. And I will entertain those who are interested in me. Of course, let me establish first. I would like the partnership with the search engines like DeepSeek, and because the Romantina Chinese language, I would like to work with the entity having a strong grasp with the Chinese language. And I thank you for your time. And I'm looking forward to your feedback. Use email, phone, call, and wishing all of you have a nice day like the way I have today.